everybody. How are we doing today? Truly, how are we doing today from me to you? Featuring Obi's Huff and Puffs. Oh my god, he literally almost ate the microphone. Obi, no. I am going to have to pet him through this video because he's not listening to me. And you don't want to lay down. Oh my goodness. So, let's get right into it. I feel like I usually start these videos with a certain experience that I want to divulge or that I need to divulge. But today, I'm going to be talking about a thought. And I was reading this article. I unfortunately don't remember the article, or maybe it was just something online, but it was discussing how we live in a time where people genuinely don't want to learn or don't enjoy learning, featuring Obi. There he is. And, reading that made me really sad, but a part of me wasn't surprised knowing where we're at in America with everything happening right now, to say the least, okay? And a part of me was sad, but a part of me also understood, because I think it's fair to say that America doesn't have a good education system. And granted, I think it's also pretty common for people to not have a good experience in an educational relationship, school. I think education has become very hierarchical, especially higher education. And I don't really think there's space in our education system today to have an even keel playing field. It's very competitive. It's very above being competitive. I think there's a lot of compare and contrast in a really unhealthy way from person to person, but also how good are you at X, Y, and Z? And I think that part with being competitive going cohesively together, but going further from just wanting to be the best, I think it's who, what, when, where, why you are the best. And even in my educational career and history, I have always struggled in education. I didn't learn how to read until I was in 5th grade. And note that's when I started to learn how to read. I probably didn't master learning how to read until I was in 8th grade. So, education was something that I always really struggled with. And then among not having a good social relationship with education, and not feeling like school was a safe place for me to be, that really made it difficult. And when I did get into college, and I did go to college, it was very excruciating for me in a lot of different ways. And my mental noise took away a lot of, I don't even want to say opportunity, but it took away a lot of space for me to feel like I was doing this for myself, rather trying to meet a status quo. And, I have met people in my life who have grown up in the educational system where their parents were administrators or educators, and did fortunately get to experience the champion-like relationship with education and having the free will access to it and being able to use the system to their advantage. But that's 1%, 5% of people. That's not the majority. And I think I think I talk a lot about like institutional shame in a lot of my videos and internalized shame, right? And I think a part of that is institutional because we're bred in a society to enforce the shame hamster wheel, right? We've talked about that a lot. But I think education is such a big part of that, right? Like the school to prison pipeline, so real. Vic Mensa, Chicago native artist who really talks beautifully about this topic recently, actually, discussed somebody who they knew that struggled in school and got in trouble a lot and wasn't championed through the educational system and ultimately got arrested, And I think those stories are very, very common. And so it's unfortunate that education isn't something where people are championed and thrived and we have the free will and space to make mistakes, and that failure and mistakes are championed rather than shamed and used to really diminish children. And I've even experienced that. You know what I mean? When I was in second grade, I peed myself 3 separate times because my teacher wouldn't let me go to the bathroom. Granted, like thinking about just like the social, emotional, and psychological effects that has on the kind of militant environment that education has become is very real, and I don't think we really give that enough space. And so I feel like in the day that we're at politically with the government and that we have the president that we have, and that the majority of these people in America voted for somebody like him, I think the educational system is a huge institution at fault for that, because we don't create an encouraging and safe environment for people to critically think. And above the quality of education, right? And above the systems of it, like that environment just isn't there. And so I think in a way, unfortunately, even this article was a little gaslighty, because it's like these people don't even realize that. And I think in this day and age and where we're at in the world, I go there. Even when election night was happening and I never watch the news. I truly think it's propaganda, and I just follow certain congressional people to really get my news firsthand, or people in the streets doing the work. That's how personally I get my news. But on election night, I watched MBNS or whatever, the most liberal, whatever news Rachel Maddow is on, okay? Whatever, that's like the most quote-unquote left, whatever, news source, whatever. And they were breaking down who was voting for Trump and who was voting for Kamala Harris. And one of the ways that they were looking at statistics through the United States, and they were saying, okay, this county was voting more for Trump, this county was voting more for Kamala. One of the statistics they used to break it down was higher education. And the counties that had a higher percent of college graduation rates were more quote-unquote blue leaning. So those counties were more Kamala Harris leaning, when the counties that had less statistics around, had less of a college degree, they voted for Trump. And I think even prefacing the conversation that way, of course, I get what they're saying. right? Like, and I think even the conversation between like Dems versus, Republicans, like that statistics and the education is a part of it. But the way that they were talking about it was so, I don't agree with that, and so I think it's hard because, again, it's like you can't fix something that you're shaming, that you're shoulding, that you're coulding, that you're wouldn't. You know what I mean? That's never going to be your answer. You're never going to get your answer. You're never creating an environment for honesty. And you're not creating an environment for change if you're doing that. You can't shun somebody into doing the quote unquote right thing, right? Like, you can't yell at you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what I was going to say right there, but, and I just was thinking about this because it's like, of course, I'm angry. I'm livid, right? Like, what's happening in the world right now is not okay. It makes me ill. It makes me ill that this is the reality. But I wanted to talk about this because I think it's really, really important to understand the layers and the things that are at play here. And that if we don't create environments where people can learn and have the opportunity to be successful in their learning, that's going to breed ignorance. And that is where we're at. And what is this teeter-totting line of saying, hey, is it okay? But hey, how can I help you? Right? Because I can't sit here and say Sally Masuzi in Bumblefuck, Mississippi, who voted for Trump, is a fucking idiot. You know what I mean? If you say that to her, it's never gonna, there's no change, right? You're fighting fire with fire. That's not the way to do this. And at the end of the day, I think the insecurities around folks that don't really have those critical thinking skills, that are then met with the people that have those critical thinking skills, can be really competitive and can feel really insecure and can feel almost unsafe in their own head because they're like, holy crap, what the fuck? How do I handle this? You know what I mean? And I think it's normal for somebody in that position to feel anger. Of course, I don't think they should be hateful, but in every which way, it's understandable that somebody like that would feel defensive because they don't have those skills. And I think this type of conversation of people not wanting to learn, it's like there aren't environments to do that. I don't think you can blame a singular individual. Like, that is truly a systematic failure above government, above education. There's no space for that. And I think then it's like creates this like you versus me fight that is so surface level, that is like a part of this like hamster wheel of not giving people the access to learn and understand and develop critical thinking skills. And also, if you even do have the platform for that, you do go to private education, whatever, like, that is hard. And it also depends, like, I think then it's like, okay, we really want to have this conversation. Class goes into it. Where do you come from? What did your parents do? What are your genetics? Neither of my parents went to college. My aunt and my uncle did. But, on my mom's side of the family, only one sibling went to college out of the 5 siblings, including her. And on my dad's side, only 2 out of the 4 siblings went to college and graduated. So, granted, those statistics aren't necessarily great and don't necessarily favor me to be over that 50% mark, right? Granted, I did it, but it was really hard for me. And would I do it again? Absolutely not. You couldn't pay me $1 million to do it. No bueno, not for me, wouldn't do it again. Because mentally, that was excruciating for me in a lot of different ways. I would need to be in a completely different mindset, maybe in 10 years, right? We'll revisit it then. But even somebody who's had the education and has had the, fortunately, access to do so on my own time, and I still tremendously struggled. So I can't even imagine, and this, I'm talking about my higher education experience here with college, but I'm just prefacing that, like, I can't even imagine somebody who has similar or quote unquote less than statistics than I do, has had no family that's ever gone to college, has had, quote unquote public education, depending on your zip code and the quality of education. I think certain states maybe do things a little bit differently, but like in Chicago, where I'm from, it's very based on your taxes in your neighborhood. So of course, the higher the taxes, the better public education it will be. The lower the taxes, the crappier the schools will be. So, I just wanted to talk about this today because I felt like these topics definitely are important to me, and I think it's important to teach and understand and help people understand how our environment affects us. And it's like, how can we change your mindset? Because at the end of the day, we got to fight this with fire. Logic isn't going to do it at this point. However, I think it's important to have empathy. And I know that's really hard. I know that's super crazy. I'm talking to a computer screen. I'm talking to anybody who's gotten this far in the video. If I was faced with one of these crazy people, who knows how I would handle it in person. It might be a different story. But I wanted to talk about this because we also have to remember that I think it's not about, the Sally in Mississippi. It's the system. And it's these corporations that have been hurting us for a very long time. And that, unfortunately, the Sally in Mississippi has gotten the short end of the stick in every direction. I'm very lucky to be from a city like Chicago. I'm very lucky to live in Illinois that has people in legislation that are fighting the fight, right? And people in Mississippi or Alabama or those southern states that I'm thinking about don't have those people advocating for them. And I think that's just something that we also should remember, right? So that is my podcast tonight, guys. I appreciate your time. I appreciate you sticking around with me. I hope this brought you closer to yourself. Like I always say, I hope this sparked curiosity within you. I hope you disagree with me. If you disagree with me, if you agree with me, run it up in the comments. I want to know. Let's have this conversation. Let's talk about it. Let's motherfucking talk about it, okay? And with that, lovely night.